Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Group Chat. We have a very action-packed episode, as always. We are talking, we end the episode with just unbelievable, who might be the next big sports agent, would actually blow your mind.
Yep.
Signing probably two of the most important athletes in sports. And then we talk inflation, Joe Biden's meeting with the big Jay Powell. What's that all about? We're talking about the death of thousands, if not millions, of small businesses all over the country that were birthed on the internet.
But we start with some optimism.
We talk about America.
Mm-hmm.
And Anand is convinced America is back.
Yes.
All right, let's get into it.
Cash.
Ladies and gentlemen, Group Chat.
Cash.
It's $1 trillion. Hot.
All right, everyone, we are back.
America's back.
So Anand's just hyped up all on America because of Top Gun.
Top Gun changed my entire mood of how I view the country right now.
So I saw an interesting, I saw the trailer. How does Tom Cruise look exactly the same?
Let's rewind a little bit. Tom Cruise, in my opinion, is the last star of that level that we'll ever see. He is so blockbuster.
You don't think Will Smith is?
Not anymore.
Post-slap?
Yeah.
You don't think he comes back with Independence Day Part 2, drops it next year on July 4th? He's not the biggest thing in the world?
I don't think so. I don't think he's Tom Cruise. And
think about it. Remember 11 years ago, Tom Cruise, when he jumped on the couch, he was considered an insane person and everyone wrote him off. Scientologist, he's nuts, he's crazy.
He put in the work. Let's see if Will puts in the work.
Now, Tom Cruise is America's favorite actor.
Tom Cruise. So the movie, which I admittedly saw twice this weekend.
Wow.
So I saw it Thursday night.
The opening
night. And it was just so good. I had to see it again.
Wow.
And it was better the second time.
Wow.
And Tom Cruise does, no spoiler, Tom Cruise does the intro hey guys, these are real F-18 planes.
Oh, it's a real intro.
We really flew them and enjoy the movie. We put in decades of work in this. So that's how he opens.
Wow.
He gives a speech
Wow.
and then the movie starts and the music comes on. It's the same music from the original Top Gun.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Imagine that stands the test of time.
Yeah.
It's pretty phenomenal. And the movie's absolutely amazing. It hits, it's rare in life where the expectations are so high and it exceeds. So the only comparison I have is LeBron James, when he came in the NBA, was expected to be one of the greatest players ever, and he exceeded those expectations. Top Gun kind of did the same. And
it's crazy. It did $156 million over the long weekend, and it is the second biggest. Oh, it actually now is reported to be the biggest opening ever from Memorial Day weekend. Oh, it just overtook Pirates of the Caribbean,
and it's Tom Cruise's biggest movie ever.
Tom Cruise's biggest movie
opening.
Ever.
Sorry,
yeah. And this is counter to everything you think that's going on. One is, physically, everyone went to the movie theater.
Yep.
Tom Cruise represents an old era of Hollywood, not Gen Z, millennial, just he's Tom Cruise. He's that white male superstar guy. I believe the movie, from what I saw, what people commenting, it's about American exceptionalism.
Yes.
All the things that
are kind of counter to the public narrative today.
That's what some people's public narrative. But it just shows people vote with their dollars always. And I don't know, everyone who saw it, I don't know if young people saw it. What was the audience?
It's tough. It wasn't kids.
Yeah.
It was people our age.
Yeah.
And older.
Yeah. Definitely felt
so I went to the first time I saw it. It's funny. I've seen it twice in 4 days.
Yeah.
The first time I saw it, we went to IPIC in Westwood.
Okay.
And someone rented out the theater next to us. We just went to just bought our tickets and went.
Yeah.
someone clearly rented it out, and everyone was dressed as Top Gun.
Wow, like the full outfit.
The full outfit. They had the mustache, they had the glasses, and they're walking in.
Wow.
So I mean, people took this really seriously.
And then where'd you see it the second time?
The Grove. Had to give my dollars to the Grove.
And what did they say there? What was
Grove
the vibe?
was just a much just a regular crowd.
Yeah.
I didn't see people dressed up, but I mean, the movie lives up to the hype. I weirdly, like you said, I felt patriotic after the movie.
That's awesome.
That a movie made us feel like, wow, America's still great.
And Val Kilmer's in it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
I don't want to like spoil. That could be
Okay.
spoiler stuff.
All right. Well, I mean, what's interesting is, being a Memorial Day weekend, we talked about this in the last episode, just about like celebrating, armed services folks. I feel like this is the perfect movie, perfect kind of. I'm curious to see if it becomes one of those movies that actually grows in viewership over time, where like people say, you got to go see this.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually changes people's mood because, last week with the shooting, we were talking about this, like a lot of people were like down on America, and sometimes you need something to like bring people back together.
Yeah, and pop culture can do that. Sports, I think, did that post 9/11. Like, you remember the like baseball games, the
Mhm.
playoffs, the Yankees, Mets, and like that was like a big deal. Sports reunited America post tragedy, and the mood amongst, I mean, call us coastal folks, but amongst our friends, I felt the mood was pretty low last week.
Yeah.
Because first of all, not only was it tragedy, now all of our friends have kids pretty much. So it just kind of hits a little harder. And, this was definitely a feel good like experience. And in our group of like 6 to 8 people that went, like we weren't the only ones that saw it twice.
Yeah.
Like other of our friends who came with us on Thursday went and saw it again.
That's just weird. So the box office is kind of deceiving then. Not that many people saw it. If everyone saw it, it really only did $75 million.
No, but
How much is a movie ticket these days?
iPic's expensive.
How much is that?
I think like $25.
Okay, that's cheaper than I thought.
And or maybe it's 25 or 30, and then they tax you on the food because you're ordering to your seat.
Yeah, what's
Great experience.
Yeah, I don't mind it. What's the Grove?
Grove's sub 20.
Okay. All things considering with inflation, that's not bad.
No, especially, gets you out of the house. If you don't like, I mean, the Grove, I ordered a Diet Coke. It was $7.50 for a regular size.
Wow.
That's inflation.
That is inflation.
And it was the fountain drink, so they're probably making 90% margin on that.
Yeah, they're just juicing that thing with water anyways.
Yeah, so it's probably cost them sub $1. They charge $7.50.
So there's another big blockbuster movie coming out, which is Jurassic World Dominion. I think that's what it's called.
June 10th.
June 10th or 17th. I don't know. I saw, but I'm seeing
it's the
insane
10th. Yeah,
advertising for it. I wonder if dinosaurs. Do people care about dinosaurs still?
It'll be a good test, like the nostalgia, because that's another movie from our childhood.
Yeah.
Even though, it
is.
Yeah, we were probably 10?
Yeah.
When Jurassic, I was 10, you probably were 13, something like that. And
so is that the movie business now? Just dip back, because like forget trying to pander to young people. Like you're not going to get them. So just go after.
It's basically Marvel and nostalgia, I guess. I mean, there's so many great movies that came out in our childhood.
Yeah, I mean, look, you bring a Star Wars back every 18 months, that's guaranteed blockbuster.
Every Marvel movie.
Pirates of the Caribbean been going on.
You could do it forever.
50 years.
Yes, you could do Pirates forever.
Yeah.
Spider-Man, you could do forever. And I think Jurassic Park will do really well. And that's the movie business, though, because all those everything else goes to streaming, right? If you're like this upstart director or upstart producer, if you're not doing blockbuster stuff, I don't know how it gets made.
Yeah.
For theater.
Yeah. So that's fine. there's the Netflixes, the streamers can give independent, that type of creative person an outlet.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the artsy films go to streamers, but like, unfortunately, the economics don't make sense to make like a $20 million movie for the theaters. You need the blockbuster. I'm also just like fascinated with just the fact that Tom Cruise is like back. He was so out of favor between Scientology and his like, and if you really think about it, what did he really do? He just went up on a couch and just screamed and yelled. You know, if we called every person crazy who got up on a couch and yelled, everyone's crazy now.
Yeah, it's just because he did it on Oprah. And it was like a daytime show.
Yeah, but like it's also a different era when the shit people do now is so crazy, and he just kind of like disappeared from basic public life and just focused on. I mean, he put out a lot of movies the last 10 years.
Yeah, and then in the theater there was a preview for Mission Impossible. He's got coming out next year.
Oh wow, so he's hot.
Yeah, he's on fire. And like it's known he does his stunts or tries to do most of them. Yeah. Like in the Mission Impossible, he like broke his ankle and finished the scene.
Yeah.
And you know, there's stories of him on set just like screaming and yelling at the crew.
Yeah.
And he reminds me kind of Kobe-esque.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Like
so here's the thing, you know, people are going to say, "Oh, he's aggressive and whatever," but like everyone loves the finished product.
Greatness is uncomfortable.
No, greatness is miserable. It's not even uncomfortable. It's miserable. It's miserable for everyone around that person also, but people don't want to accept that. They want it to be like, why can't you just be a great person? And no, because he drove everyone nuts on the set probably, and that's why the movie came out so great.
Yeah. And Miles Teller's in it. You know, he's in War Dogs. You remember that?
Yeah, the skinny guy.
Yeah, not Jonah Hill.
Yeah, obviously.
He crushed it.
Yeah.
Like he had a very important role. I'm not going to spoil anything, but like you have to go toe to toe with Tom Cruise in scenes.
Yeah.
That's intimidating.
Yeah.
And he crushed it.
Great. I'm excited to see it. Maybe I'll go to the theater.
You have to see it in the theater. Do not wait for the shitty
release.
airplane screen.
It is a movie about planes. It'd be great to see it on a plane.
You need the sounds. You need the effects. The music just resonates so much better in the theater. And the enemy is not named.
Wow.
Of no foreign country named.
Wow.
So you think they just did that because...
Yeah, because
you can't alienate China. You can't alienate...
If you say Middle East, then you're being racist. If you're saying Russia, it's not timely.
But yeah, I thought it was very fascinating that a foreign actor wasn't named.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. I like when you can kind of hate on a foreign country.
Yeah, I mean, all the Mission Impossibles,
they
exist in foreign countries, right?
You gotta have like, that's interesting. You can't even do that anymore.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. The other interesting thing that I read over the weekend, speaking of shortages, Mexican pizzas are selling out all over Taco Bell's. And apparently, by bringing it back on the menu, they're seeing 7 times more demand than they did previously when it was on the menu.
So you think people just said so much like, they may take it away again? Let me get it while it's here?
I think it's a combination of a couple things. I think one is...
Have you had one since it's come back?
I tried to get one on Postmates like the day or two it came out, and it just wasn't on Postmates yet. So I didn't get a chance to have it. But like, I think what's interesting is you take something away from people, then immediately they want it. The rollout for bringing it back on social media was so good. So I think it was just an exercise in incredible marketing by Taco Bell. And I think we're also at a time where people want to indulge and don't have the budget to indulge. And Mexican pizza is a cheap enough way to get some sort of like social media moment and kind of feel good about yourself for an inexpensive dollar amount.
Yeah, it's human psychology. When you take something away, like you said, you didn't realize how much you wanted it in the first place.
Yeah.
So you rushed, like you wouldn't have tried to order the Mexican pizza had it not come back.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I normally used to eat it anyways, but I wasn't ordering it regularly.
Right.
Check this out. In Roseville, California, the Taco Bell there, so they sold more than 1,000 in one day.
That's crazy.
That's fucking nuts.
And given the items Taco Bell sells, that's probably on the harder side for the people to make it. You
Yeah,
got
it's not an easy dish.
You have to-
Bean and cheese is just, it's folded up
so
and
workers
spit
are
it
getting
out.
put to the test at Taco Bell.
But man, it's pretty fascinating. And it's even more fascinating. Like we're in this weird era where there's shortages on everything you can imagine, but also everyone is over inventoried on everything else. Like every retailer is reporting a surge in inventory. But then everything that people want, you can't get.
Yeah, there's a oversupply of everything that was popular in the pandemic, and now an undersupply of things that weren't popular in the pandemic.
Yeah.
So like plane tickets are insanely expensive.
Insane. I cannot believe how expensive it is to fly or drive anywhere.
Mm-hmm. And that's two things people didn't do in the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, there's a war that's causing oil prices to go up, but even absent Russia, Ukraine, airplane tickets would probably not be as high, but it'd still be much higher than we were used to.
I was at Javier's this weekend, and they don't carry Lo Siento, so they should. But I was ordering like tequila brands, not even the popular ones. They had nothing. And then I went to another bar and ordered some random brands. Nothing. They're like, we don't have this, we don't have that, we don't have this, we don't have that. No one has anything.
Interesting. I mean, have you experienced that out here?
Yeah. All the time.
Because you were down in OC.
But even restaurants here, I'll be like, do you have this brand? Or
Well, there was a 1942 shortage. I remember that.
That was a while ago.
It's back now.
Yeah, it's more readily available. But that's also like $50 for a glass.
Right.
If you're going to have 3, it's like...
Yeah, I mean, that's also... People weren't eating out as much 18 months ago.
Yeah.
So that's oversubscribed now.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to model demand.
It's impossible. People don't realize how impossible it is to model demand.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll see. All of this being said, higher prices, a deflating stock market has caused 25% of Americans, according to a survey by the BMO Real Financial Progress Index, says 25% of Americans will have to delay their retirement. And we even talked about a lot of folks who are unretiring. There's been some interesting statistics on that as well. I mean, this was the narrative in 08 and 09 when so many people's life savings were wiped out. I think the biggest difference that I think it shouldn't be as painful this time, especially of people close to retiring age, is those older folks, call it 60s and above. Let's say you're 65, 70 years old, you're close to retiring. You more than likely own your home. And real estate prices still have not depressed,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't think people are expecting it to go down like it did in 08.
No, I don't think so either.
So it could stay flat. It could go marginally down. And most Americans' wealth is tied in their homes. And then I would say 401ks. So I still think most people's wealth is tied into their home. So if push came to shove, could you refi? Could you sell your home and still retire and go live in a cheaper part of the country? Is that an option? And so that's why, as much as this statistic is like, it's a huge number, I think younger people definitely, like if you're 35 and you're thinking about retiring and your stocks and, like, can you actually, this is a great segue in that same conversation. What is happening to people's, unless you have any more comments on this?
Well, no, I think the home price appreciation's important to note. So year over year, March 21 to March 22, it's a 21% increase in home prices. So it's the Schiller Index, which I think models out 20 of the biggest cities in America. That's a large increase.
Yeah.
In an interest rate, like rising environment.
Yeah.
And
It's also the supplies.
that's the real issue because of NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Yeah.
It's really hard for developers to build. So despite interest rates rising, I think a lot of people in real estate say there just isn't supply. And if you look at the Blackstones and of the world, the massive private equity firms, they're making large plays in residential real estate, and they have been for the last 12 months because they're just literally looking at a supply and demand chart and say it doesn't matter what rates go to, it doesn't matter what happens to inflation. There's just so few homes that prices still go up. And I think everyone's expecting a real estate residential correction. What's the catalyst? If it's not interest rates rising, if it's not a stock market that has been crushed, at the minimum, you're down 20% year to date. Doesn't even matter what you own. Yeah. If you own a stock in the stock market, the minimum you're down 20%.
If you're the S&P 500 index
if you
person.
own Amazon, you're down 40%. These are companies that everyone owns.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't cause home prices to decelerate, interest rates rising, I'm sure the price increase will decelerate, meaning it's not going to be 21% the whole year if you keep going year over year, but it's not going to be negative 5%.
Yeah, because the reality is no one's selling because you can't go anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So we know someone at Open Door, and I remember having that conversation with him. He was just saying that it's not there's just no supply. So when there's no supply, it's impossible for the prices to go down.
Yep.
Because people are just not willing to sell. So it actually may save the housing market from that standpoint.
And there was $500 billion that got refinanced in the last 2 years in America
at very low interest rates.
Low interest rates. So people have money, but they're unretiring, and the delaying of retirement is interesting. But 35% of Americans don't own homes. It's a pretty large number.
Yeah.
So if you don't own a home, you probably don't have a big 401k.
Yeah. So I think that's what my point is that I think if you think about who does this retirement age group really affect, it's I would say under 40, because most under 40 folks probably haven't had the opportunity to buy a home. And with the prices the way they are, and now credit being tightened, banks are not going to lend as easy.
Right.
It's all those things cause. And so those folks got crushed on 401ks. Probably if you work in technology, your equity is basically worthless. What's happening with employees? I'm reading a lot of stories that employees, what was the situation at Bolt where they lend against the stock? I didn't understand what was going on.
So they were giving recourse loans the company was issuing, because to exercise your stock, you have to buy it.
Yeah.
So you have to come up with money.
Yeah.
And if you're an early employee who has millions of dollars, how are you coming up with it? You borrow it from someone? How many people have millions of dollars just give you to exercise your options? So they were lending to their employees, but it was recourse loans. So if the stock gets remarked, you're in default.
Yeah.
Then you lose your stock.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that sounds great in the up and to the right era, but when everything's down and to the right, it's still down to the right.
Yeah.
People get wiped. I mean, I unfortunately have friends who've been crushed with.
So why do you have to exercise it?
What do you mean?
Let's say you have stock options in a company, and the stock got crushed, right? Do you have to exercise it? I actually don't know.
So
how it works.
I can tell you from pre-IPO to IPO, what happens is before a company goes public, you have a strike price that you are allowed to buy your stock at.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to receive those shares, you have to come up with that money to exercise your options.
Got it. So if you want to get liquidity,
if you want to own your equity.
Yeah.
So I've two separate friends at the same company, won't say the company name. One exercised his options after working for like 5 or 6 years and now is massively underwater in those options. Separate friend at the same company just walked away. And so he worked for 4 years and came out with no equity. So
Because it wasn't worth
it
exercising.
wasn't worth at the price he was striking at.
Because it was higher than what it's valued today.
Yes.
So then the hope that it recovers,
Mhm.
that's crazy. So I'm guessing a lot of people will walk away then.
I think in today's market, I think a lot of people will walk away because, as we know, private companies haven't corrected. Basically, we were talking about it offline. Any late stage growth company that raised money last year between, call it July of 2021 and November of 2021,
Yeah.
at the minimum, you should be marked down 50%, likely down 80, 90%. Unless you have an Adam Newman type CEO that can just go raise more capital.
Yeah, I wasn't there for when you guys talked about that, but fascinating.
Yeah. I said good for him.
You're telling me none of those people watched We Crashed?
I think they all watched it.
And they were like, this guy's great.
Maybe they thought they were betting on Leto.
Yeah.
And not
Jared
Adam
Leto
Newman.
should go raise money.
He
As
can't.
Adam Newman. Like, he should literally go.
If Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway went and started a company, who wouldn't back it?
Yeah, I'd invest in that.
With that acting job?
But he has to pretend that he's Adam Newman, and she has to pretend she's
Rebecca
Rivka.
Newman. Rivka, sorry, yeah.
Rebecca.
Or is it Rebecca, right?
Yeah, but he called her Rivka.
Oh, Rivka, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. The other interesting news that just came out, Salesforce beat earnings, beat revenue expectations, stocks up. I mean, I guess I don't know. It's Salesforce is one of those companies. It's unclear to me, what they actually do. I understand they have the CRM software, blah, 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 but like.
So I think what we've learned this earnings season specifically is there's a divide in the market that there is demand. There are companies spending, whether it's on SaaS or consumer spending, whether it's Nordstrom or Macy's even. And there's just no excess spend.
Yeah.
So if you have a shitty product or you're a shitty company, you get chopped.
Yeah.
And if you're a good company and still have a good product, there still are consumers spending and there are companies buying your software.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the only way that you can...
Which is a good thing for the markets.
Yeah.
Because there'll be a divide between quality and lack of quality. And, I mean, these companies are proving it. In the midst of, like, so many companies getting cracked another 40, 50% post this massive correction, like a Snapchat, you have a Salesforce, which is up. You have Nordstrom, Macy's, like I said. There's a handful of others that did really well, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of those companies did really well and show that they weathered the storm.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing, I don't know if you saw this. So Rothy's, which is like a direct-to-consumer darling, like people love this business. They do super comfortable women's flats, and everyone was like, "This is the best business." And everyone had always told me that it was profitable.
Mm-hmm.
So I assumed it was. They did a deal where they sold half the company to the firm that owns Havaianas, the sandals brand, and they're publicly traded, so their numbers are out. In Q1 of this year, they did $32 million of net revenue, which I thought the business was bigger, but fine. They did negative $9 million of EBITDA.
So people are lying to you.
People are lying.
But talk about good for the Rothy's ownership selling in December.
Yeah.
They top ticked the market.
Yeah.
If
out.
they got $1 billion for 50%, I can guarantee you they're not worth, 20% of that.
Yeah. I mean, at these numbers, you're talking $144 million
That's
business.
a $200 million company.
Yeah.
That's losing $36 million a year.
Yeah. No chance.
Maybe not even $200 million. In this environment, it's probably not even investable.
Well, I mean, I would say that, let's look at a comp like I don't know how big Allbirds is, but they're an $800 million market cap business, and let's see what their revenue is. I'm assuming it's bigger. It's 277 million last year. So
Are they profitable?
No.
Yeah, I think we talked about this on a couple episodes ago about how hard it is to scale a consumer-facing brand profitably after a certain point. And Rothy's might have been profitable when it was doing 70 million in revenue,
Yeah.
but clearly not profitable when it's doing 140 million in revenue.
The problem is like, you know, you start looking like Victoria's Secret released earnings today, and they're profitable. And so when you look at all the shit everyone talked about these businesses, this company makes real money. So they did 1.48 billion in revenue, which is still big. They did $76 million of profit.
And what's their market cap?
Let's see. I mean, I guarantee you it's probably not. It's worth 3.4 billion. It's probably fairly valued,
Mm-hmm.
but it just tells you that a lot of these other businesses are still very overvalued.
Yeah, I think between Apple changing their privacy settings, it removed basically the growth hack everyone had in D2C
Yeah.
completely, while costs had already risen leading up. And that was just like the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Cost of acquiring customers had already dramatically increased in the last 5 years, where most of these businesses weren't viable to begin with at those levels. Now you remove the privacy setting, you're going to see a lot of companies just disappear.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other interesting thing is like Apple doesn't get enough like flack for basically ruining an industry.
They basically ruined the small business e-commerce industry.
They ruined it.
Yes.
Completely destroyed it.
And they might have taken Shopify down with it.
Yeah, they took it was such an incredible ecosystem. Frankly, of like the Shopify ecosystem gave hope to it's the next generation of shop owners. You know, like your local shop, you own the dry cleaner and your neighborhood, and you made a great living and you lived a great life and whatever. That's what Shopify was. There was millions of sellers all over the world selling enough to get by.
Mm-hmm.
And Apple came and destroyed it.
Under the guise of privacy.
That's the joke.
That's the joke.
I mean,
they don't care about privacy.
No.
It's just convenient because for their business, they don't need to track.
No, they don't need to track.
They just need to sell hardware.
Well, yeah. And by the way, like, they track it as long as they get to use it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're just showing our face every 10 seconds.
And think about, like, they know our movements.
Yes.
They track our steps. They track everything.
If you are into privacy, you should not be tracking my steps or my location.
It's interesting. If you look at, like, some of the OG crypto folks, they all use Android.
Yeah.
Because of privacy.
Yeah.
They know there's no privacy in Apple.
Yeah.
Like, so crypto whales, you'll see them with the shitty little Android phone.
Man, if I see you with a shit phone, I know you're rich.
A shit phone, you know they're crypto rich. Yeah. Shit phone in like a high luxury environment, you know they're a crypto whale.
Yeah. It's interesting to see, but it's also like it's such a big shift because like the fact that like this incredible ecosystem of businesses are just gone.
It sucks.
It sucks.
Because think about how many people that have come through like the group chat world that all had Shopify businesses.
Yeah, which was awesome. And I know everyone says, oh, it was easy, just a growth hack. It wasn't that easy.
No, you still needed a product people wanted. Now you can't even show your product.
No, yeah, even if you have a great product, you can't reach people anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually
it's
really
crazy how they don't get flack for it.
I think people because it's easier to blame. It's everyone says Facebook doesn't work anymore. Well, no, Facebook was working. It's just these guys made sure it doesn't work.
And it's also like a brand equity exercise. Like Apple's brand is so great. Facebook's brand has gone through the mud.
Yeah.
So it's easy to blame Facebook when it's really Apple's fault.
Yeah. Everyone just wants to blame Facebook.
Because the issue is as we know, as people who've ran e-commerce businesses, you're paying Facebook for the ads. You're not paying Apple.
Yeah.
So when your Facebook is your person draining your bank account and you realize it's not working, you're not blaming Apple. You're blaming Facebook.
Yeah.
Just silly.
I'm sure Apple had that like analysis on their thing. Like, okay, we're going to screw all small businesses across the world. But guess what? We don't charge these people. These guys did.
Right. I mean, think about it. It removed, what, 20 billion in market cap from Snapchat last week.
Yeah. It's moved 500 billion from Facebook.
Right.
500 billion.
And then Pinterest got thrown under the bus. They announced nothing.
Yeah.
They just got...
They're just like, no one's advertising there.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I'm surprised there's not like... This is when like you want to do a congressional investigation on big tech. Like, what was behind this? Let's talk about it. This affects, tens...
What privacy are you really protecting?
Hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs, right?
If globally, millions.
Millions. And they did it on
millions of jobs, too.
Millions of jobs. Now we're talking like almost $1 trillion in market cap removed from the economy.
Yeah.
All on a switch.
Yeah.
And that'll never be investigated.
Yeah. Well, luckily, Joe Biden congratulated Powell today.
Oh my God.
What is he congratulating him? He's cratering us.
Yeah, I really don't get this.
And he's congratulating him. So they finally met. I don't know what took so long.
6 months into the biggest market crash in 22 years.
He hasn't, you're telling me he didn't even like, yo, let's grab lunch. Let's catch up. What are you doing over there?
Right.
And he promises a laser focus on inflation. All that means is you to keep raising interest rates. There's nothing else he can do.
Yeah, this is like a lot of like just headline words. And then Joe Biden said he's going to stay independent from the Fed. So he's not going to bully the Fed like Trump did. And, whether Biden, the administration wants to accept it or not, I mean, we've talked about it. We're talking about unretirement. We're talking about 25% of people delaying retirement. A lot of that's linked to just economic pain from the stock market. So, there has to be a strategy. Like, everyone knows inflation has to come down. But if you can't control the sources of that inflation, how much do rate hikes matter? And no one's given me a right answer on that, or a good answer. And I think, if you have another 6 months of the stock market down another 20, 30%, which is possible, I don't think it's going to happen. The market's actually held up in the last 5 days. People think this is the first time in the last 6 months I've heard investors saying, the Fed's actually doing a decent job. So, how that plays out, well, time will tell. But I think politicians need to focus on this issue they need to be much more than just laser focused and letting the Fed do whatever they want, even though the Fed is an independent body. You have to care about if Americans are just creating their wealth.
Yeah. And it's, the problem is obviously we're, on this podcast, we're more fixated on the stock market because that has a direct impact on so many of our daily lives. The average person is being impacted by gas prices and other inflationary things in their daily life. And it just doesn't, you're not getting a warm and fuzzy feeling that politicians are actually paying attention.
Yeah, there's no signaling how much they can actually impact those things.
That's fine. Just make us feel good.
Yeah, there's no signaling now.
Because that honestly there's a reason why we track consumer confidence. It doesn't matter if we have the money or not. If we feel confident, we will go spend it.
And Republicans will just continue to bash Democrats because Democrats are in power and they want to win the midterms.
Yeah.
So
what is the Democratic strategy now to actually win if all of these things are happening? What's the playbook?
I think it's guns and Roe v. Wade.
Yeah. That's not going to win in most cities. It'll win in the coast. It's not going to win in the middle of the country.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to see what the sentiment is in the middle of the country, like the last few weeks versus the coast, because we're only experiencing the coast.
So I'll tell you, I have friends who live in Texas. Talk to them. They have kids. I don't know their political beliefs, but they were very fucking concerned.
Were they?
Because their schools like went into crazy protection, like security, fucking fencing everything up. Like the schools got act quick.
Yeah, the story that's not told is the school where this happened, Robb Elementary, they increased their security.
Yeah.
They increased the presence of officers.
Yeah.
And it still happened.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
And then you saw that there was the kid in Dallas who got caught with the AK-47
was
walking
like 10-year-old, 12-year-old, whatever.
nearby a school.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Where do your friends live in Texas?
One's in San Antonio, one's in Austin.
So
they're like visibly like shook.
I mean, yeah, because that's the easiest state to get a gun.
Yeah. And so I think I don't know how they vote, and I don't know what their general feeling is on it. So curious to see how local people in Texas vote this time around.
Right.
What happened affect your political beliefs?
We'll find out, but this is the Democrats' chance to
problem, I think it's a great platform, and I think it's something they should continue to talk about. But dude, when you don't have money,
yeah, that's
economic uncertainty erases all social progress.
I mean,
gone.
Internally in Bill Clinton's campaign in the 90s, Democratic campaign, it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
That's it.
That's all that matters to the average person. If you can't pay your bills, unfortunately, you become very selfish, and you're like, I need to fucking pay my bills. I'm sorry that all this is happening in the world. I do believe generally people inherently are good and they want the best for themselves and their community. But like, if you can't pay your bills, you're like, fuck this.
Right.
Give me.
But I will say it feels like we're close. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we're close to a tipping point on gun laws changing nationally. I have this cautious optimism that this might be the event that actually gets action. And, I hope we don't have to experience another one, but
yeah,
I think you kind of feel the general sentiment shifting for the first time.
Yeah.
At least in my adult life.
Yeah.
Not saying it's going to change at the speed we need it.
Yeah.
But I have this weird hope that this really shook people on both sides of the political spectrum.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. I think now you always feel that after these incidents because they're so horrific, but you'll have to see it in policy, right? And you have to see it when who gets elected.
Yeah, I mean, the moment you just become a cynic, you lose. So if these are issues you care about, you just have to keep trying.
Yeah. And I think you have to like this is where if you're smart as a Democrat, you use the leverage of the economy as a benefit to get policy changes you want. Like, hey, there's levers. If there's levers on inflation that the Democrats are not using, push that to the Republicans and say, great, let's pass this. Let's help the people in your state also, but you got to help us here.
Right.
On gun laws. But we'll see. All right. Here's an interesting thing. The Great Resignation was something that we've been talking about for the last 18 months. People quitting, people moving on. And there's an article here about the typical Gen Z worker, and they are coming into the workforce demanding more things. Flexibility of schedule, remote work, all of these types of things. All of that shit is probably out the window now.
Yeah.
I don't see a world that you can allow that type of or you don't even need to allow. Just be like, hey, we're looking to hire folks that will come into the office. It's a Monday to Friday job. Are you interested? If you're not, this isn't the place for you. I think some businesses will ultimately not have offices again. I do believe that. But the big companies are going to have offices, and you're going to have to go in if you want that stability.
I mean, I think in a deteriorating economy, you would think employers will start demanding people to get back in the office, and people who don't, end up either getting laid off or fired. But we haven't seen it in just LA office space.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't really spent much time in downtown, so I can't speak to downtown, but where we are, which is pretty mid-city, still empty. Century City, which is as office as it gets. I was there like a week ago.
Yep.
That Avenue of the Stars, all that empty. So when is it going to start? And those are traditional office jobs. They're not like, sure, if you work for a crypto startup, you can work from anywhere. Or if you're an engineer, if you're purely in a technical industry, those are the only industries where you can really mark performance. Just because, like, if you're an engineer, you have these 5 tasks to do. Did you do them or did you not?
Yeah.
But not many other industries have that.
Yeah. So look, at the end of the day, like, small businesses do employ most of this country, not big businesses. And I'm curious to see the dynamic shift. Okay, maybe remote work still becomes a thing of the future, but I think all the other flexibilities might get removed. If going to the office becomes impossible because, well, companies have gotten used to not having that expense, maybe you just have to give in on the, like, hey, we can't give you like 6 weeks vacation or whatever it is. I don't know. Something has to give because the economy is clearly in a recession. Things have slowed down. Companies don't have money. Hiring freezes everywhere. Like,
do those buildings in Century City get rezoned to condos, like half office, half condos?
most lawyers I know are back in the office.
Really?
Yeah. The big companies, they're back in the office. One of the companies I texted, we never left.
That's funny.
So I think it depends on the industry.
But I also think a lot of the companies in Century City, if they worked in entertainment, like, their biggest line item bill was their rent. So they're like moving to different smaller spaces, and they're taking advantage from a cost perspective. Like, why do we pay the most expensive rent in the city?
Yeah.
When we realize we could do our work remotely.
Yeah.
So there's also that dynamic.
Yeah. I look, I think that's particularly on where you work, but I think this also is addressing the expectations of Gen Z workers on also the type of job. Like, I talked about this last episode. There's a shortage of lifeguards. There's a shortage, like, literally no one. I don't know. I mean, if I was a young person, lifeguard pays well. You sit in the sun.
There's lifeguards that make $500,000 a year in California.
Yeah, that was a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, the fact that, like, there are shortages in so many industries, like, it's going to be interesting to see. Like, everybody wants this, like, perfect job, and that may come, but it may come 20 years from now. It may not come today. So if you're waiting for that, then your sacrifices, like, there's on this article on Business Insider, it's talking about a TikTok person that says, I live in a society where my productivity matters more than my well-being. And so I'm just depressed and anxious all the time. I'm smiling, but I'm deeply wounded. I work 3 jobs and I still feel like I'm not doing enough. And they're talking about mental health days. They're talking about, I don't know. It's a really tough spot for employers and a really tough time for Gen Z employees in particular. Because you're going into a terrible work employment environment where, like, really highly qualified older people are going to take lesser jobs to pay their bills.
Yeah, I think, the dynamics shifting real time, and everything goes out the window in a deteriorating environment.
Yeah.
And employers will do whatever they have to do to stay alive.
Yeah. And then you as the employee,
You just, if you're willing to move back to your parents because you can be happier, you're going to do that.
yeah.
Because the employers won't care.
Yeah. It's gonna be really, the next 6 months from the job market, it's gonna be fascinating because people are still, it's still record job openings, but that's gonna shift so fast. Like we talked to our friend, he said he had 50 job openings and they just froze all of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Pretty much everyone in technology is on a hiring freeze.
I mean, Amazon, just forget the technology side, the warehouse side.
Yeah.
They're letting people go.
And they're giving up warehouse space.
Yeah.
They're giving up leases.
Yeah.
It's like 10 million square feet or
It's up
something
to
crazy.
30 million now. That's what people are saying.
That's crazy.
And we're going into the slower period of time of just retail in general. And so people are going to panic even more and just be like, fuck it, cut it.
Mhm.
Cut it, cut it, cut it, cut it. That's just what's going to happen. Well, we'll see how it all plays out. All right, well, let's end on a sports thing.
Yeah.
A lot of action in sports right now. We have NBA Finals, Golden State Warriors versus the Celtics. Nobody cares about that. This is what I care about because I hate nothing more. I hate than the Golden State Warriors and the Boston Celtics.
Okay.
Kanye West, the hottest sports agent out right now, signs Aaron Donald and Jalen Brown. Apparently,
Yeah, apparently Jalen Brown like last year, and they just kept it under wraps.
So Aaron Donald just signed a huge contract, right?
He signed one
2 years ago.
2 years ago, but no, they're talking about he's in negotiations for an extension right now.
Wow.
I was watching First Take this morning, and they were saying like,
So Kanye's going to eat off Aaron Donald's new $100 million contract.
I mean, it should be more. So Aaron Donald, I think, he's the best defensive player in the NFL today.
Yeah.
He's arguably, people say, top 2 defensive players of all time.
Yeah.
And he signed with Kanye.
And Jalen Brown is an unrestricted free agent in 2024. He's good for a good $200.
He'll get a max deal.
Yeah.
I mean, he's coming off a finals appearance.
Yeah.
What's interesting about Jalen Brown is a very smart dude. He was one of the more vocal people when it came to social justice reform in the bubble and even pre-bubble. He was he gave some like great speeches at some of the marches, and from all accounts, like a pretty serious dude. He went to Berkeley.
Yeah.
And then he signed with Kanye? Like,
Star
what's
power,
going
bro.
on?
Star power. Maybe those conversations they're having privately are like about impacting change. And he's like, how are you going to change it if you're working with, whoever his agent is?
Yeah. And Aaron Donald, I mean,
he signed just 2 superstars.
yeah.
Donda Sports is hot.
I just hope there's there's a lawyer that's doing the negotiations.
No,
Like the
I would love if Kanye just be calling, Cronky and be like, nah, we need more money.
Yeah, and then Aaron Donald over the weekend, he was on the All I'm an Athlete podcast. I forget what it's called, saying like he's at peace if he never gets another contract. He said that in the interview.
Well, that's not good for Donda Sports if he doesn't sign another
If he
contract.
doesn't sign another contract, what are you doing?
Kanye's a guy that just doesn't go away.
No, he doesn't.
He's always doing something in the background. Like he's been generally silent the last few months.
Yes, he's been quiet.
After dropping on a Coachella, you haven't heard from him.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is the rumors are it's like he was kind of teetering off the deep end and like, you want to see your kids again, you got to reel it back in.
Yeah.
And he did. And then he signed Aaron Donald. I mean, this guy, you've spoken to him. Is he like that captivating?
Yeah. The shit that like, he just knows how to communicate to people. He's so fucking charming. Like the stuff that he said to me, I was like, man, Kanye's amazing. I love this guy.
Right.
And I think like, he's so charming. He's an incredible, like, he makes you think type of guy. Like, he was like, why don't you do it like this? And like challenges.
What's crazy is he was with Antonio Brown, spotted everywhere.
Yeah.
Antonio Brown, as talented as he is, I mean, he took his shirt off and just started waving because he wouldn't go back in the game.
Yeah.
And previously had some other like less than ideal scenarios where he was clearly at fault.
Yeah.
And then you have Aaron Donald, one of the greatest players of all time.
Well, he
Like, I'm
cut
gonna join
Antonio.
the-
He's not hanging out with him anymore.
Yeah. And then Jalen Brown is really surprising to me.
And because he's young, that means that his contracts are for the next 20 years.
Yeah, he's like 23 or 24 years old.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Donda. Love it. All right. Well, that's it. We will see you back here on Thursday. I know it's a short week, but we're trying to crank these episodes out. And have a great hump day. Bye-bye.
Peace.